So we're going to go ahead and get started, and if people come in, they just come in and we'll ask them their name and embarrass them and all that stuff. So I'm Brad Thompson. This is my wife, Karen. We have been married for, I remember the date, but my math skills are poor. All right, we've been married since December of 1986. So in December, that'll be 32 years. 32 years. We have two children. Haley is 28. She's our child with special needs, and Karen will tell you a little bit more about her in a minute. Our son Justin is turned 30 in March, and so there's no way we can even pretend to not be old anymore. When your kids hit 30, you kind of have to claim it. We have a 2-year-old granddaughter. Ella Grace will be 2 tomorrow, in fact. And so we're going to race home tomorrow morning to make sure we get to spend at least part of her birthday with her. So the first thing we want to tell you is that we are humbled to get to be here with you. We think it is an amazing thing. Oh, second thing, if you look over there and see that handwriting, that's mine. If you make fun of it, I'll probably start to cry because I'm just that fragile. But I know my handwriting's poor. All right, typing is a good thing for me. And I have to tell you that it is almost a miracle that I can tell you that Karen and I have been married for 32 years. I've made more than enough mistakes for her to say I've had enough. And a lot of those come from being in a sense of denial about who our daughter Haley is. Never was in denial that she had conditions and issues, but spent a lot of time in denial about how it actually affected our family, our marriage, our professional life. And so I want you to know that going in, that as we talk about marriage and relationships, that a lot of the lessons we've learned have come from struggle. And I think that's the way life is. So it was several years ago, and Haley went with me. We go to all the big cities and speak. And so we were in Salina, Kansas, I believe. And Karen decided that she was going to take a respite weekend and not go with us. So Haley and I go, and we get introduced, and we're to start speaking. And after the introduction, Haley gets behind the microphone, and she says this. She said, "My mom's not here. Her name is Karen, and she's the smart one." So today, you will find that that is true. She's the smart one. So if you have really hard questions, send them her way. All right? We want you to know that while if you're here and you're single, that we believe that the things we're going to talk about this morning really fit for all relationships, and they're really pointed at us being self-responsible about the way we handle those relationships. At the same time, there will be some pieces of this that are specific to marriage, and so but we don't want you to get up and leave. We want you to try to do the work to see how it might fit with you. All right? So there's a book out by the dean of the Harvard School of Education. His name is Ryan. His last name is Ryan. You'll find out that I'm incredible with the details here in a few minutes. But the book is entitled Wait What? The 5 Essential Questions to Life. And he ends this book with this little poem. And we love it for our setting. He says, Raymond Carver says, "And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so." I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. We think this is really fitting for parents who have kids with special needs, because what a lot of the world thinks is that having a child with special needs is almost a death sentence to adult relationships, right? That it becomes all about our kids, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to suck the life out of us. And while we're not going to deny that it's hard and tough, And we're not going to pretend that we know exactly what life looks like for you because your situations are different than ours. What we do believe is that life is still good. That there's still joy, there's still peace, there's still hope to be found. And we want to share that with you this morning. All right?
Sorry, I'm doing the detail thing.
Yes, you are, and I appreciate that.
Can you hear me? No, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold on a sec.
Right.
Well, here. Is it
So
my
give
turn?
those to me so you can tell these stories. Did anybody get in without getting one of these besides these two people right here? Not that we're calling attention to you.
Does anybody,
Yeah.
does anybody else need one? Okay.
Good?
Everybody good?
Okay.
I'm just real curious. So you guys that have kids, I'm curious of the ages. So how many have a child 0 to 5? Oh, wow.
We all grew up together. That's funny.
Wow. How about 5 to 10? 10. And then, what's the next number? 10 to 15? 10 to 15.
Speaking of good at math.
And then 15 to 20.
Oh, all kids?
You're one with special needs. So, yeah, you guys don't have... No, you're good, I know. But, yeah, so really the child with special needs. So they're more young. Are most of the kids with special needs younger? Anybody over 20? Any of your child with special needs over 20? No? So they're still in school or not in school yet. Okay, awesome. Sorry, I've got something stuck in my throat. So just really curious about that. So you guys that have the younger ones, the main reason for this picture is to give you guys just a glimpse. Hey, like Brad said, Haley's 28, so we're 28 years into this. That's where the gray hair and the
Bald hair.
and the bald came from.
Yeah.
We're not actually that old. It's just raising Haley has created that. I have a Wednesday night class at church, and I have about 80 to 90 adults with special needs in there. And it's an amazing class. There are all disabilities. There's every kind of diagnosis you can imagine. We've got verbal, nonverbal. They're in wheelchairs. We have everything in there. This right here is not actually our classroom. This is a picture of a restaurant. So I take them once a year to a local restaurant and do our Christmas party. And so this is our guys at a Christmas party. And the reason I want to show you this is that our guy, am I talking too loud? I feel like I'm talking too loud.
Don't look at me, I can't hear.
Our guys have a purpose. The amazing thing about this Christmas party is there's probably about 100 that show up. And the amazing thing about this Christmas party is we pay for the bill, so they can order what they want. We pay the bill. The really cool thing about that is that when we go to pay the bill, someone in the restaurant has taken that bill and paid it. And it's a big bill. It's like $1,500 bill. It's not that's with tip and everything. Our guys make a difference in the world without speaking a word. They're just there. They were just there. They're there back there laughing. They are the most well-behaved. The employees that wait on them, this is probably our 5th year that we've done this. They volunteer to come wait on these guys because they can't wait till every year for these guys to show up. So you guys are just starting your journey, and even the ones that are a little further along, this is what I want you to see. And the ones of you that are just pouring into our kids with the services that you provide, thank you, because this is where we're all headed. We're headed to this. There's 2 reasons, like I said, there's 2 reasons for this picture. The first one is just to show you that they do have a purpose. And the second one is like Brad's poem, like he read just a minute ago. The first line, it says, "And did you get what you wanted from life? Even so." I guarantee you these guys do. Every one of them will tell you that they did get everything out of life they wanted. Even so, even though I've had pain, even though I've been ridiculed, even though I've been abandoned, I got everything out of life that I wanted. The thing you don't see in this picture that's very important is you don't see that most of these guys live in group homes in Amarillo, we have an amazing group home system, but some of them live at home. The thing you don't see is their parents. I can tell you where every one of these parents are. I can tell you if they're deceased. I can tell you if they, let me back up. So in my group, I have ages 19 to 73. So some of these guys are really, their parents, have have gone. Like I said, you don't see the parents. They're either gone or they're exhausted. They're not, some of these parents and their siblings are not any part of their lives. And I don't tell you that for you to, the one thing I want you to know today is we're going to try not to cry. You guys cried all day yesterday. We're not crying today. We are not, well, Brad will probably make you cry because he's just a crier. But, I just want you to realize that because some of these guys don't have anybody else in their life anymore. And there's lots of reasons. There's different reasons for that. But I want you to pace yourself. That's the bottom line. I want you to pace yourself. So that way when your child is, when Haley's 73, I hope I'm gone. But when your child's older, I want you to still be able to find that hope and that joy and not be exhausted. So pick your battles wisely, especially when they're young. Pick them very wisely because school system, once they finish the school system, it's adult world. And it's adult world is challenging for our guys with special needs. There's no one, you can get mad, but there's not, you can't do much about it in the adult world. So that's not, I don't mean to be negative on that, but what I'm telling you is you got a long journey. It's a long journey, so pace yourself.
Yep. You got it.
Oh, I'm in charge.
You're in control.
No, backwards.
There you go.
This is Haley. This is this is our Humpty Dumpty, is what we call her. She and I know you guys understand this, right? They fall off, they break, we put them back together, and if the next day you look and there's another crack, and you don't know what doctor you're supposed to call, you don't know if you wait and see if the crack goes away. So it's always kind of constant. But we show you this picture because this is life with Haley. She is such a blessing. She is such a joy. We do not believe that when Haley came into our lives 28 years ago, that God was caught off guard with this child. I believe she has a purpose, just like those other group of kids I showed you. I think they all have a purpose. And Haley has a tremendous purpose. This picture represents a couple of things. And like I said, it represents her joy and her blessing, but this also represents our life. This is a picture that was taken for Mother's Day. My daughter-in-law set up some Mother's Day pictures. I had Haley ironed. I had everything clean. I had her dressed right. She did perfect through these 2 hours of pictures, and these were outside. She did perfect. Wait.
See if they notice.
Only to get to the end of the pictures. And do you see anything wrong with this picture? Pants are on backwards. Seriously. You dot all the I's and you cross all the T's only to get there and do your pictures. and the pants are on backwards. It's like, how did you do that? But, so that represents life. It represents life with our guys, I mean, no matter how many times you think you've got everything perfect. I had it all perfect. It took me hours to even find this outfit so she would be comfortable in it. And the pants are on backwards.
Yeah. So, you good? No.
No, one more thing.
Okay. I'm taking this.
Okay, you can.
Yes.
So once again, we all have a story. Our kids all have a story. They have a purpose. Yesterday, Dr. Wilkening? Yes,
Wilkening.
Greta. She was the last one to speak yesterday, the neuropsychologist. Awesome. We were talking to her before she went in. She posed a question to us. She said, so in all of her years of working with families, she said, I still can't predict which families are going to be okay, which parents are going to be okay, which siblings are going to be okay. And so, we had a conversation about that, and Brad and I kind of continued that conversation. And I think going back to, I think there's a lot of variables to that, but I think one of the number one variables is if you believe your child has a purpose. You can see the world a little bit different. You see their future a little bit differently.
So do you?
Your turn.
Do you believe that your We got to learn a lot about Dravet syndrome, and one of the things that Karen and I get to experience, this rich blessing, is that we get to go places and we get to watch people work for our kids who, they don't have a child in this arena. They don't have, they didn't get born into this like Karen and I did. I would love to tell you that I would have had this huge heart for kids and families with special needs if Hali hadn't shown up, but I can't promise you that. And the reason I can't is because I know how hard I fought to keep my life, quote unquote, normal after she did show up, to where I'm kind of thinking my path would have been very different. And I want to tell you that if my life had been very different, I would have missed out on some of the great blessings in life. Hali has taught me how to love people. She loves everyone. If she were here today, she would hug you before you gave her permission to, because that's what she does. If you did something that hurt her feelings, she would say it's okay before you could say I'm sorry, because that's how she's wired. She has taught us, well, she's working on this. Hali doesn't worry or stress about anything. We tell people she's just a carrier of stress. She doesn't experience it herself. She just gives it to those who are around her. She's a carrier.
That's why you have no hair.
Yeah. That and genetics, you start to look at things and go, oh, yeah, I had no shot at having hair if you look at your parents and your grandparents. But one of the other blessings is we get to meet people around the country that have an incredible heart for our kids. And you saw that speaker after speaker after speaker yesterday. People who stay up nights trying to figure out how to make life better for us. And one of the amazing things about this conference is that the people who've put it together have said, it's not just about taking care of kids. But what if we helped keep parents healthy for the journey? And I'll just tell you, it doesn't matter how great your services are. If mom, dad are not healthy, kids are going to struggle, right? And you don't have to have a child with special needs to know that that's accurate, right? When home's chaotic, kids are chaotic. And when kids are chaotic, it's really difficult for them to grow to their potential. Okay, so hopefully you've left your kids in good hands. If you didn't, can't worry about it for the next hour and a half, all right? If they pull fire alarms, we'll meet them outside, right? If they grab a mic somewhere, we'll hear them. That was hilarious last night. I loved that. Maybe we need that young man as president. I don't know. No political commentary here.
Are we out of paper?
We are. I
you-
asked them to bring some more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So, all right. We'll get you one. You may not want it. And so, regardless of what's going on with your children, let this time be about you. All right? Just about you. So take a breath, relax, laugh when it's appropriate, okay? Because laughter is good for us. All right? How many of you would describe your life as generally chaotic? Go ahead, show of hands. No way you can be by yourself. Generally chaotic. All right? What makes it chaotic? What? Life.
For
Okay.
us, it's the unpredictability.
Okay.
Epilepsy is just unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah. It just is. It just is. You can go days, weeks, nothing, and just about the time you think you've, bam, right? It just happens. Well, I wonder have we grown so accustomed to living chaotically, if that's a word, that it has become our norm, so that we don't even question whether or not there are spaces that we don't need to live that way? Do you find yourself in a hurry, even when there's no reason? Every now and then we'll be sitting down to dinner and I'm eating like boom, 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 boom. And Karen's like, why are you eating so fast? Because. But I don't have an answer. That's the only word I get. What do you have to do? Well, no, it's just my norm. And we never stop to think. There's this great book out there. It's getting to be an older book. It's entitled Adrenaline and Stress. And what the author talks about in Adrenaline and Stress is that our adrenal systems were never built to be used all the time. They were created for fight or flight moments. But we, especially in America, get so used to living that way. We're kind of adrenaline junkies that we never give our bodies chances to slow down and recover. And I think in the culture we currently live in, we wear busy as almost a badge of honor. Right? If I asked you how you were doing today, I bet 80% of you would say, busy. Whew. Got a to-do list, it's too long to get done, right? How many of you, in talking to other parents in the last 24 hours, have felt guilty because somebody's doing more for their kids than you are? Okay? All right? Please let go of that. Okay? Who says that all of the things they're doing are even good for them? And if they're all good for them, who says it would be good for you? So what if we just let go of that? And what if we remembered that because of the incredible medical advances that are happening in this field, the chances of your kids living long lives are getting better and better. So what if you thought about this as not being a sprint, but a marathon? And I wonder if the pace that you're currently trying to keep would ever work in a marathon. And I would be willing to bet that at least for some of us, the answer to that is no. So unless these people who came in late have kids older than ours, we have the oldest child in the room. Haley's 28. And chances are, even at 28, she's only about halfway through her journey. And so if you have children that are less than 5, have you ever seen a picture of the start of a marathon? I got to start going quicker. But have you ever seen a picture of a start of a marathon? And there are those people that are at the back of the line who have to run a mile before they ever get to the starting line to start the marathon. Yeah, that's where you are. You're just getting started. And so if we don't learn to pace ourselves, if we don't learn to find some space to rest and rest our minds, we are going to end up in the ditch. And no one can keep that from happening but us. Are there pieces and spaces and relationships in your life that don't have to be chaotic, that can help you to find peace? And do we regularly spend time there? Now, I've talked about these things. Karen and I have talked about these hundreds of times. And I always have, almost always, a mom say, but you don't understand. Okay, I don't understand being a mom. I'll give you that one. Where am I supposed to find this time? And I'm going to say, I don't know your life and I don't know your schedule, but I do know this: you cannot afford to not find this time. And that's not a guilt statement, okay? Not intended. It's if you want to see your kids through their journey, you have to take care of you. Okay? And if you're in relationship, you have to take care of each other and support each other and help. We had this friend give us this piece of advice. She said, prepare for the darkness while you're in the light. Okay? You've all been in this, right? You have moments of peace and you have moments of great chaos and you have moments of great struggle. Well, the way we're going to survive those times of darkness, if you want to call them that, is to prepare for it while we're in the light. Okay, in those moments of calm, are we doing things that recharge us, re-energize us, refuel us? So when that hard time comes, you have the energy for it. Are you taking care of your relationships so that when the hard time comes, you're not doing this alone, but you have a partner? I'll just tell you, and we watch single parents do this, and we don't know how. Because I just know that without somebody to tag and say, you're it, I don't know how you do it.
Do we have any single parents in here? No? Okay.
Not good, but just, yeah. It's good to see. I got to tell you guys, thanks for showing up. Most of the places I go, I speak to about 95% women, which emotionally I fit more with a woman than a man, but that's all right. Do you have relationships that are a place of light? Okay, is your marriage one of those places? Okay, when we have children, it's really easy to lose focus on our other identities, right? I always tell this story. How many of you go to church? And I don't care if you go. I mean, we're not going to have a come to Jesus meeting or anything like that. But when you were dating and you went to church, where'd you sit? Next to a cute, and hopefully the guy you were dating, but, and I'll bet that you were touching each other somewhere. He had his arm around you, you were holding hands, something. Then you got married, you had kids, and where did you put that child? Between you. And strategically, that's a good move, right? Keep them surrounded as long as you can. If you continued to have more children, where did you put them? Between you, because you still have to keep them surrounded. But if you'll notice, what happens to the space between you and your spouse? Keeps getting wider. And how many of you are no longer known by your name, but you are known as, in our case, Haley's dad or mom? Well, we cannot lose the identity of husband and wife and even individual if we're going to stay healthy. Because Haley's going to keep taken from us, not because she's selfish or immature or any of those things, but because she is a child. And children are needy, right? If we're not taking care of this, No one else is going to. And what we find in doing this is that the further we get apart, the harder it is for us to maintain that intimacy that's needed for healthy going forward. Parenting has always been divide and conquer, always has been. Okay? And parenting a child with special needs makes that even more intense, right? In a lot of cases, one of us goes to work and the other one stays home. And we just get to that, right? But we're going to spend some time at the end of this talking about us. And the pronouns are going to get really weird, but we hope you stay with it. But do we divide and conquer in a way that actually supports and builds up us? Or do we divide and conquer in a way that allows us to start taking shots at the other person? Like, well, I go to work all day. Yeah, that's not a good answer. I know that the hard way. Or, I've been home with her all day. It's your turn. What if we divided those things up in a way that says it is the best expression of our relationship for you to do this and me to do that? And what if, however the roles were divided, I looked at Karen and I encouraged her and said, thank you for doing this. For us, not for Haley, for us. Because remember, if we're healthy, our kids are going to benefit from that. Our kids are going to receive the overflow of these good, healthy individual and couple relationships. So this morning, we want to take a look at a couple of things. The first one is your personality. Have any of you ever done a personality profile? Any time? Okay, so we're going to run through this pretty quickly. And one of the things you're going to know, as a marriage counselor, I spend a lot of time with couples who say we have nothing in common. And I just look at them and grin, because you are truly looking at a couple who has nothing in common. We were sitting at a meeting in Dallas that Greenwich was doing, and they set Karen and I on opposite sides of the room, and I just kind of chuckled, and I said, "What? Why?" And one of the guys said, "Because we want to see if you guys think alike, having been married for so long." And I just laughed and I said, "I know what she's thinking, only in that it's exactly the opposite of whatever I'm thinking." Okay, so, and as the day played out, he kept looking at me and grinning like, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I know." So I only know what she's not thinking, even now. So as we walk through this, are you an extrovert or an introvert? If you're an extrovert, raise your hand. If you're an introvert, raise your hand. Okay, these are neither good nor bad, they just are. Okay? And the question that we're answering with extroverts or introverts are, where do you get your energy? Okay? I'm an extrovert, an extreme extrovert. You walking in and me getting to greet you, man, that is life-giving to me. If y'all want to hang out all day and let's just talk, and it doesn't have to be about anything important. In fact, I'd prefer that it not be. I am in. Okay? Karen's not that way. Karen is an introvert, and she's an extreme introvert. Hard for you to believe, probably, but she is. It's not that she doesn't love people. Extroverts don't love people more than introverts. They just do things differently. So this gathering today will drain Karen where it energizes me. Right? You're good. She's an introvert. She doesn't have to
do you want
talk.
me to say something?
No. No, I was just afraid you were going to, and I was like, don't know what I'm going to do.
I didn't know if we were ready to talk about
no, we're not.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you got to stick to the script.
I'm sorry. You'll hear in a couple more letters, you'll get why that's important. Yeah. Extroverts love breadth of experience. Introverts prefer depth. So while I know thousands of people and can have a trivial, meaningless conversation with anyone. Karen has more good friends than I do. Difference between an extrovert and an introvert. Okay. Extroverts don't mind being the center of attention. In fact, many of us kind of enjoy it. Introverts would prefer to be behind the scenes. Okay. How's that fit with you? Okay. And then what about if you have, well, you all do or you wouldn't be here, when you have children, especially when you have children with special needs? How might that impact being an extrovert or an introvert?
These are things to think about. So as we're kind of talking about our personalities here, think about personalities too. They're going to address things differently. And then think about the personality of your child with special needs. Haley's an extreme extrovert, more extroverted than Brad. You can see that by her picture. I'm an extreme introvert. So that's tiring. It's tiring for me. And we have to be careful with that, and I have to know that. The main thing about understanding your personality, I especially with our guys I think it's when you're raising kids, period. But with our kids with special needs, Haley will live with us forever until she decides she wants to go live with her brother. She's going to be there. And so when we have to function too long outside of our wheelhouse, and when I mean function outside of our wheelhouse, I mean it is not your personality. It's not my personality to be with people all the time. When we function too long outside of that, it is not healthy. That's where one of the issues come in, is understanding your personality and being okay with your personality. This is where guilt comes in. Okay, this is where moms, mostly probably more moms than dads, but this is where, when Haley was younger and it's like, why is this, I can't do this. Why is this frustrating me? I realized that later on, it was because it was not part of my personality, and I was functioning too long outside of my wheelhouse. So knowing that, like I said, knowing your personality, being okay with that, and not feeling guilt when you realize I've functioned too long outside of that. Extrovert, introvert, if you're an extrovert and you have and you're the caregiver and you're staying at home all day with your child, it is. It's hard. It's very hard. But knowing that you're not a bad mom or a bad dad because you're having those feelings. If you're an introvert like me and then you have to have 24-hour care in your home, wow, that's hard. That is hard. We don't have that, but I know some of you guys have to have that, and that right there is a huge challenge. Knowing it and understanding that is huge.
Yeah.
And then also understanding the sibling. So Justin's an introvert. He was not going to express anything to us about Haley. He's going to think about it. He's not going to, and an extrovert is going to express more of what they're thinking. Yeah. Sometimes. But anyway, understanding their personality too. Because if you can understand the sibling's personality, you will realize that it's not because they don't like their brother or sister. This is how they have to process all their information.
Yeah. Yeah. So think about this, back to marriage a little bit. Oh, and just Haley's wedding present to them was a big blow-up mattress with nice sheets. Not that we're encouraging that or anything, but yeah. And just think about this: when you and your spouse are in a disagreement, and one of you's an extrovert and one of you's an introvert, who has the upper hand from the beginning? Well, I'll just tell you, it's the introvert. Why? Because she actually thinks before she talks. And I process out loud. So in the process of figuring out what I want and what I think is best, I give her all the ammunition she needs to win the argument. Yeah. So give us a chance to think out loud and come to a conclusion. Like, don't say, well, that's not what you said 5 minutes ago. Yeah, because I was figuring it out. Okay. Extroverts and introverts. The second pair is, are you a sensor or an intuitive? Do you focus on facts or possibilities? Okay. Sensors take in things through the 5 senses. You know, what you hear, see, smell, touch, all of those things. Clearly, I'm not that. And then they make decisions based on those facts. What intuitives do is they take those facts and then they start thinking in terms of possibilities. What if we could do this or that? Intuitives are big dreamers. Okay? Sensors stick to the facts. They like to make decisions that are realistic, that are practical. And they need ideas to be practical in order to really entertain them. Intuitives are not that way. We don't need our dreams to be practical in order to really enjoy them. I can go to meetings with dreamers and I come home at the end of the day and Karen says, well, how'd your meetings go? And I said, they were awesome. What are you going to do as a follow-up to me? Nothing, but the conversation was awesome. In our next meeting, we're going to get back together and talk about how awesome our dreams are. And she says, please never invite me to those meetings. Yeah, because. And I'll just tell you, early in our marriage, this right here was some of our greatest struggle. Because I would go away to something and I would speak or do something and I would come home with this world-changing dream. And I would find Karen and I'd sit down beside her and say, we're going to do this. And she would say, no, you're not. I said, you can't do that. And as a dreamer, what was she doing to me? She was just crushing me. After this room full of people was telling me, we can change the world, she'd say, no, you can't. Never mind that she's right. It's that it's crushing me.
I say it more politely now.
Yes. Yeah.
I am more gracious in the way I say it.
Yeah. But, well, what we found is there will always be somebody who will tell me I'm awesome. But if it's not her, am I going to the right person? No. Truth is, I'm not always awesome. In fact, I rarely touch awesome. Okay? But what I found was it was more comfortable for me to find people who would support my dream than it was to face reality. And what we learned over the years is that because I'm still a huge dreamer and I still come home and say, we're going to change the world in some way or another. But now Karen doesn't say, no, you're not. She says, let me think about that. But the cool thing is that after she's thought about it, she comes back with a plan. And she says, you know that dream you had? Here's how I think we can make this work. Now, it may not be as grand as you were hoping for, but here's how we can make this work. And I'll tell you that we're standing here today because of my dream and her practicality. Because it was my dream to work with families who have kids with special needs, especially in the area of marriages, because in relationships, because no one does that. And it was she who said, this is the way we can do it. I'd still be dreaming, and it was still going to be awesome, but we'd still be dreaming. And she's put the legs under it. Okay? So, polar opposites still, but learning to work together. And this has a great impact on our kids as well.
Yeah, so most of our kids, we've realized she couldn't be a teacher. So as a censor, we have to be real careful with that because we really don't want to squash their dreams. We have to help them figure out how to make those possible. Our biggest thing with our adults with special needs is I want them to be working whatever they want to do at their maximum capacity and in the job that they want and in the world that they want. Haley works in a preschool. She's not teaching. What she does is she mans the door, and you either get in if you're on the list or you don't. She's black and white, and she's been harassed by some people, and but she's so black and white. It's like you don't get in to get this child. Well, that is so comforting for families because they know that they are not getting. Nobody's getting past Haley to get to that child. She's not a teacher, but she is a protector of these kids. But the bottom line was she loved kids, so we had to create. So we have to be careful with that with our kids with special needs. They are dreamers, and we don't need to squash those dreams. Kind of what looks different with moms and dads as a censor, I'm a censor, Brad's intuitive. The censors are going to know more of the details of the child. So you're going to know more of where the medications, who's supposed to show up when they're supposed to be here and here and here. And the intuitive parent is going to see the possibilities. So the censor is going to be focusing right now on what needs to be done. The intuitive parent is going to be seeing the possibilities. They're going to see their future. They're going to see what can come from this. And so there's going to be, a difference there. Also, when we're in meetings, whether it's with the doctors, schools, whoever, a censor parent is going to look more negative. But actually, it's just being realistic. So we come across as more negative, whereas an intuitive parent comes across as in denial. Neither one of those are true, but that's the way it comes across with our personalities when we are dealing with other people. A censor parent is going to, the censor parent, when it comes to being with the siblings, is going to be able to probably read the sibling a little bit better and understand maybe kind of what's going on in the sibling. The intuitive parent is always going to be positive, and even though it's not relative to the situation, they're always going to come up with something positive, which is awesome. I mean, it's mostly awesome unless it's just a really bad situation. And it's like, I don't want that positivity right now. But anyway, so that's kind of what it looks like with our kids and the difference in our personalities. Yeah.
So, warning, never send a dream. Happened one time in Haley's 28 years, but I think Karen had to take her mom to the doctor, and Haley had what was just supposed to be a follow-up to one of her many doctors, and so I can do this. I'm an engaged, involved parent, right? And I have a flexible job that pays me the same whether I work or not, so I could take off and go to this doctor's visit. So I go, and the nurse comes in, and she has the little computer thing, and she's starting to ask all these questions. And I totally choked. What medications is Haley on? Well, one of them's kind of blue, and it's round. And there's another one that's kind of a green. It's a capsule, and it's kind of a greenish tint. And now I'm starting to get nervous because I'm thinking I am failing this test, and CPS is on speed dial. And she said, Brad, could you do me a favor and talk to Karen before you? Yes, I can. So now in my smartphone, I have a note that has all of Haley's conditions, doctor's phone numbers, medications, and if I remember to update it, it's accurate. Mm-hmm. So even if I choke, I at least have her information to keep her safe. Okay. That's...
this is also where guilt comes in too, is because I am the detail person. I know, but we went to a doctor's office one time, Brad and I both, with Haley. And the doctor's like, okay, it looks like she had a gallbladder surgery. And we're like, oh yeah. It's like, how do I forget that? How do I forget my daughter had surgery, gallbladder surgery? I had totally forgot that. And then they asked us what doctor, and we couldn't think of his name. And so that doesn't bother him because that's normal for him. It doesn't bother him. I'm telling you, I felt so guilty. I felt awful. I was like, oh my word. That's when I realized, like I was talking a while ago, when we function too long outside of our wheelhouse, this is what happens. And I beat myself up. I'm like, how in the world can I forget a doctor's? We still couldn't remember the doctor's name by the time we left the doctor's office. It was awful.
Give us a
devastating.
break. Gallbladder is like, doesn't make the top 50 of medical
No,
concerns
no,
that
it's not
Haley
important.
has. It's gone. It's all good.
Yeah.
But
It was fixed.
and I did not say, hey, you're the one that's got to remember this stuff. I've learned at least enough to not like throw guilt her way. Third thing, are you a thinker or a feeler? Okay. How do you use information or make decisions? Okay, so this comes from the Myers-Briggs, and there's 100 different personality things, but we just choose this one. In the Myers-Briggs, the other three pairs of letters are fairly even in terms of males and females. But in the thinker-feeler category, they are divided a little evenly. 65% of men are thinkers. 65% of women are feelers. Okay? Remember, I told you when we started that Karen and I are polar opposites. And she's the thinker in our group. So what does that make me? It really makes me the woman in this group. Okay. So, we just know that and we keep going. That's why she said, if we start crying, I'll be with y'all. Okay? Okay? And those of you who are a little disgusted by us crying will be over there with Karen making fun of us crying. And
We don't make fun of you. We just look at you like,
whatever. Yeah, sure you don't.
just observe. Yeah. What are
yeah.
those?
So-
Tears.
So, that being said, thinkers make rational decisions. Feelers make decisions based on emotion. And that doesn't make them bad or wrong because emotions are real. They're just not factual. Okay? But they're real. All right? Thinkers make decisions based on fact, and when thinkers are in disagreement, they don't get upset about it. It's just life. When feelers are in disagreement, we think the world's coming to an end. Right? I remember early in our marriage, one of the first times we were in this big disagreement, I'm pretty sure she's leaving. And I'm like, trying to make sure it's all right. And she's going, what is wrong with you? We just had a disagreement. What's the big deal? Well, I'm a feeler. This is important when it comes to our children as well, right?
True, and making decisions. There are going to be decisions we have to make, and we're not going to be on the same page. And probably one of the main reasons we're not on the same page is because we come from different personalities. I'm going to base mine more on, I'm a thinker. I'm base my stuff on facts. He's going to be more of the dreamer, future person, and he's going to base most of his decisions based on his feelings in his heart. So let's take, for instance, you have a doctor that we've had a doctor that we have fired, a neurologist that we've had to fire. I am more likely as a thinker to be okay with switching doctors if I'm not getting quality of care. But if that doctor is a good person, Brad has a harder time making that decision. Whereas you can be a good person, but if it's not quality of care, we've got to move on. The same with the doctors with bedside manner and no bedside manner. I'm okay without a doctor without bedside manner. It's harder for him. We're going to look at those decisions we have to make medically. We're going to look at those differently, and it's going to take a while sometimes to come together on that because we come from totally different perspectives on that. One thing, thinkers want things justice. They don't like things that are unfair. They've got to make sure that we've got to create fairness in this. One thing to kind of be aware of too, as your children get older, and if you are the caregiver, you're the one that stays home mostly, If you're more of a thinker, more ST, like sensor thinker, you're going to feel like you're losing your intelligence. As time goes on, that's where you're going to feel like you are starting to lose, because if you're not being able to use that and you're only staying home with the child, you're feeling a loss of intelligence. Whereas a feeler is going to feel more of a loss of identity. So theirs are going to look a little bit different. You're going to feel like you've lost who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once again, with the siblings, if you can figure out if they're a thinker or feeler, thinker's going to tell you what they think, and the feeler's going to be a lot more emotional about this.
Just for the record, I voted to fire the doctor because I didn't like him, not because he wasn't good.
Well, he wasn't a nice person either.
Yeah.
So,
So
Yeah.
it was easy. It was a unanimous
it was
vote.
easy,
Yeah. In that case.
Yeah.
But 28 years, we've only had to do that once, so we think we're doing pretty good. Last pair, and we'll do this pretty quickly. Are you a judger or a perceiver? Are you a planner or are you spontaneous? Okay? If you're a judger, that doesn't make you judgmental. Okay? But do you have a plan? Do you have a to-do list? Do you actually keep it? Do you finish it? Okay? Judgers will have that to-do list. If perceivers have a to-do list, they will lose it before they finish it. Okay? All right? Judgers are organized, right? And they need that order. One of the easiest ways to say it is judgers are filers, perceivers are pilers. All right? Karen walks into my office and goes, "Oh my God.
Oh, it's awful.
How do you find anything?" It's somewhere in here. And that I know that. I'll get to it. And it drives her insane. She cannot work in my office space. It is so disorganized that her brain just can't handle it. It just feels like home to me. All right. Some of y'all are laughing at me, and I get it. Yeah, and so you get to see that. So, trying to hurry just a little bit. How does that affect us parenting? Huh?
Right. So, as a judger, as a judging parent, it's going to be a challenge for you if you have a child that has an ever-changing world. And our kids with epilepsy, as she was talking about a minute ago, it's always changing. There's no predictability. It's harder for a J parent than it is for the P parent. The perceiver's parent is going to have a lot more challenge when there has to be structure. When medicine has to go bam, 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 or people, when there's structure involved, they are going to have a lot more challenge with that. Difference between when you have a meeting, the difference between a J parent and a P parent is a J parent is going to feel stress going into the meeting, but once decisions are made, we're great. A P parent is going to be fine going into the meeting, but once they're done, they're going to feel stress after, because if they feel like they've been forced to stick to a plan. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So do you have kind of an idea? We rushed through that. When we're doing a marriage retreat, we'll take a couple of hours to do that and let you do a little assessment to show you clearly where you are. If you're interested in doing that, we have a very, very brief one sitting right on this counter right here. You're welcome to take one, do it. It's certainly less than incredibly scientific just because of the brevity of it. But it might give you a clue, and it might give you some conversation to have with each other. What we find is a whole lot of times that when we're in conflict with our partner, it's simply because we see the world differently. And because she obviously has a very different perspective on the world than I do, I don't understand her. And she doesn't understand me. And too often, we don't take the opportunity to really slow down and try to understand. I think Stephen Covey, who passed away a few years ago, one of his 7 habits was what? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think in any
relationship, whether it's your partner, your spouse, your friend, your doctor, your caregivers, whatever it is, if we would take the time to seek first to understand, that would be huge.
Hey, did we get any more papers yet? We're going to
No.
need that. Did you tell Jamie? Who did you
Yes.
tell?
Yes, I did.
Did you text her?
Yes, I did.
Because they're going to need that for.
Yeah, you might send it now. So, we're going to make a little shift and talk about communication. When things get anxious for you, when you start to feel stress, when things start to feel a little chaotic, what happens to the hair on the back of your neck? Stands up. What happens to your heart rate? It increases. What happens to your breathing? Typically gets rapid and shallow. What is that? Fight or flight. It's fight or flight. Our brains tell us that there is a stressful situation coming and we have to prepare ourselves for it by either preparing to fight or preparing to run. Right? Physiologically, when we go into fight or flight mode, what's happening? Okay. Our brain is telling our heart that we have to prepare for battle. And so the only decision to be made is, can we win this or do we need to run? Well, so if those are the only two options, then
Here we go.
ask and you shall receive. Who doesn't have one of these?
Back here. And
Okay. Okay. You're going to want this in a minute. Well, you may or may not want it, but you may use it here in a minute. You could hand that. Anyone else? Neither of y'all. Oh, somebody shared. Awesome. So, if that's the only option, then our brains, being as good as our brains are, says, I don't need to think. I've got to fight or run, so I'm going to pump the blood to the big muscles, my arms and my legs. Some people will tell you that in fight or flight mode that your vision actually shrinks to only be able to see right in front of you, meaning you have no peripheral vision. How many times are you actually in the need for fight or flight? What if we chose a different option? What if we considered pause and plan? And I'd suggest to you that especially when we're working with our kids with special needs, that pause and plan is a more appropriate response than fight or flight. Because what we really need to be thinking about when we're making decisions for our kids is the big picture. Right? And if in fight or flight our brain is telling our heart to pump the blood to the big muscles, arms, and legs, where's it going away from? Your brain. And if it's big picture stuff, we have to be able to think. Right? Well, what pause and plan does, in fight or flight, it's our midbrain reacting. It's our midbrain that is the survival part of our brain that's reacting. But in pause or plan, where our brain's telling our heart that this is a big picture issue, we have to be able to think it through. It changes that blood flow from the arms and the legs to the brain, specifically to the frontal lobe, which allows us to consider consequences and ideas and future. Which is your norm? Fight or flight? Or pause and plan? And if we realize that we're safe, okay, bless you. If we realize that we're safe that the people in the room, while they may disagree with us, probably share our goals. They want what's best for our child and our family. They just disagree on how to get there, meaning we're safe. Remember I told you I went to all these big cities, and one of them's this little bitty town in Louisiana, and I was talking to their teachers, and I have this conversation with them because I want them to stay calm in their IEP meetings. And I asked the question to start, have any of you ever been punched in an IEP meeting? And I've done this a bunch of times, and I've never had anybody say yes. Front row, lady raises her hand. Yes, I've been punched. And over the course of the rest of the day with her in the front row, I got it because I wanted to punch her by the end of the day. She was a little annoying, but she's the only one out of hundreds of people that ever raised her hand in that. And why did I say that?
Safe. Safety.
Safety, thank you. Yeah. Remember, I'm an extrovert.
Squirrels.
Safety. It doesn't mean agreement. It means we're safe. And if we're safe, then fight or flight is an inappropriate response. And it allows us, pause and plan allows us to think. So, when you're in chaos or under stress, how do you feel? And where did those feelings come from? Right? So, I think in your notes, because I'm such an organized person, you may have a sheet of paper that looks like this, that asks, why do we react? Oh, yeah, we did. Great. Karen didn't get the last look at our notes to make sure you had all the details, so she's a little nervous until we actually get through it. So the way we think and feel about things comes from one of three places: our family of origin, the people who spoke into our lives as kids, and then life experiences. Okay, there's a lot of psychological theory that says there are 4 or 5 things that happened to us before the age of about 5 or 6 that shape the way we see the world. And while I don't disagree with that, I don't think it's all-inclusive. Because I'll tell you, the single most life-shaping event that has ever occurred to me is the birth of Hali Thompson. And I was obviously older than 5 or 6 when that happened. But she's totally changed the way I see the world. Okay. Understanding these shaping events is really important, because the person you're with didn't share any of these 3 things. Okay? They didn't share your family of origin. Okay? They probably didn't share those same people of influence in your life. And especially those childhood experiences, they didn't share those either. Okay? And those shaping things cause us to see the world a little differently. And primarily, they cause us to see things in a couple of different ways. If we're stuck in the chaos which leads us to fight or flight, there are typically a few ways that we handle that. Okay? When we're in stress and we're in fight or flight, one of the things we do is blame. Okay? Why would we blame? Well, if it's your fault, I don't have any work to do. Is there any benefit to being a victim? Anybody? Yes, there is. What's the benefit of being a victim?
You're off the hook.
You're off the hook. You have no responsibility. Whatever happens here is someone else's fault. And while I'm not suggesting that's a good way to live, some of us have tried and failed enough or struggled enough that at the end of the day, we think the best we can hope for is that it wasn't my fault. My life's not very good, but it's not my fault. Well, blame, right? Another thing we do is shame, okay? And shame is a flight response, whereas blame is looking for somebody else to blame. Shame always says it's my fault. Okay? I'll just tell you, I'm a shamer. as soon as something goes wrong, I just start looking for what I did or didn't do. And I just assume it is my fault. Okay? Another response is control. And control is a fight response. How many of you, when you start to get stressed, start to try to gain control? All right? Yeah, I got a few. Will any of you go as far as control freak-ish behavior? Wow, easy. I'm not a control person. She is. All right? And we'll tell you a little bit of a family story here in just a minute that will make that make sense. Okay? But if you've had bad things happen to you when you were not in control, you learn that the only way to be safe is to be in control. And so as soon as tension starts to happen, you start to seek control, right? Okay. Then the last one is escape. Any of you runners? I've seen your kids, so I know some of you have runners, but are you runners? Yeah. I grew up in a home that had one room upstairs, and it was my brother's. I had a brother who was 2 years older, his and my bedroom. And one thing I learned pretty early in life, especially as we got to the junior high years, that it had to be a major life catastrophe for my parents to be willing to come up the stairs to talk to us about it, because it wasn't pretty up there. And it didn't smell pretty either. It was before Febreze. You couldn't even squirt a bottle and make it better. So what I learned was if it got tense downstairs, just run. That was great until I got married and I shared my bedroom with the person who was in disagreement with me. And now I have nowhere to go. All right? So, I'm going to share some things with you that are pretty personal. You ready? You ready to write?
Oh, I have my cheat sheet, so.
Huh?
I have my cheat sheet.
Gosh, test. Good thing I don't stress about tests. My GPA reflects that, but anyway, it's well beyond the statute of limitations. So when things are chaotic and I start to feel stress, here's some things that I feel. I feel unworthy. I feel like I don't measure up. I feel like I'm not good enough. Where do those things come from? Well, so I grew up in a good home. 2 parents who loved me and wanted what was best for me. And I had an older brother and a younger sister who would probably translate the same home that we grew up in very differently because they're not wired the same way that I am. But what I learned early in life is that our home was a performance home. Some of my buddies got paid for A's. I got grounded for B's. Okay? And I got threatened if the A crept toward B. Not because my parents were mean and evil, but because they wanted us to do our best. I had a coach who would tell me before every basketball game, if you play well, we'll win. When you're in high school playing basketball, what should you have more than anything else? Fun. Do you think, given the home that I grew up in and those words, that I had much fun? No. Thankfully, we won almost all the time. But when we won, what do you think I felt? Relief. Whew. I didn't let anybody down today. When we lost, what do you think I felt? Failure. You're a failure, because if you'd have played well, we would have won. Now, these are small issues, right? Except that they shape me in the way I see the world. That people love me when? Not when I do my best, when I perform up to their standard. Well, then I get married. Can I always perform to her standard? No. And if I don't, will she still love me? You say yes, but that's not my life experience. So I know I've messed up. I get home and I've forgotten the milk. What do I do? Because if I just admit that I'm forgetful and I screwed it up and I didn't get the milk, she can't love me. So I have these strategies, and they are awesome for relationships. Okay?
There you go. I wrote them down for you.
I was going to get to make up a new list, but apparently, yeah, she knows these. One of my favorites is I play dumb. And I am good at it.
Very good.
Okay? You may think I'm a natural at being dumb, but it will be things like, I didn't hear you say that. Brad, I texted it to you. These smartphones are killing me. I get defensive. You know how busy I was today. I make excuses. At my worst, I'll just flat out lie. And in every other relationship prior to this one, it would kind of work. But in this one where I can't get away from her, it doesn't work. Because eventually I get found out, right? And it affects the way we connect with each other. But what I want you to know is that I'm not a bad human being. In those moments where I'm afraid that she can't love me or somebody's not going to like me, please like me today. Okay? Whether I help you or not, tell me I did so that I can go feeling okay about myself so I don't have to play these strategies. When I do this, it's not about her. I'm not saying I'm going to play dumb so that I can hurt Karen. I'm saying I will fix that later. Right now, I just have to get rid of this feeling of not being worthy and not measuring up and not feeling loved. And that becomes such a big deal to me that I will literally destroy all relationships to take care of that. And when it really gets complicated is when we add Karen's side to this story. And I'll just tell you, my story's way easier than hers. My story's kind of whiny. I grew up in a good two-parent family that just demanded the best of me, right? Karen has a hard story. Okay? And she's not going to share all the details with you. But she comes from a very different place. And she's going to share some of that. And I get to write.
You get to write.
Her writing's much better.
Here's the cheat sheet if you need it.
I don't. Well.
Like Brad's talking about when you hit, when he feels all of that, measure up, inadequate, whatever, his fight or flight's going. His midbrain is just firing, and he's trying to deregulate that. The way to deregulate that is to get to a place of safety, which creates his coping strategies. That's what his coping strategies are. That's how he gets to where I have to create a place of safety. Most of our triggers, like Brad said, comes from those origins, the family origin, important people in your life, major events. A lot of those triggers are going to be there because there's a violation of either love or safety. And that's usually where one of those come from. Sometimes it could be both. Brad's is more of a violation of love, unconditional, not really getting unconditional love. Mine comes more of a place of safety. My environment was not safe. I learned some great things from my mom and dad. How to work hard, how to serve. They were huge servants. But then it was a very dysfunctional family. I had a father who was very proud, and women were not of value. and he was very abusive in many ways. You combine that with a mom who was very submissive and a mom who was beaten down, it creates a challenging environment there. Not going to go, like I said, into all the details of that because we don't have time and it's not important. But women were not of value. Women were not, you were not heard. Your opinion didn't matter. He was very controlling. When I was in my 40s, that gave away my age.
No, it didn't. That was
True.
just yesterday.
That was yesterday, but he's been gone for 5 years.
Yeah, they didn't know that till now.
I disagreed with him, and that's all I told him. I said, it was a decision he made, and I said, I disagree with you. He would not speak to us for 18 months and wouldn't even let my mom speak to us. So in my 40s, we were abandoned by our parents. So I have a huge fear of abandonment, which did not happen until my 40s. I never had that before. But then all of a sudden, we're orphaned because I said I didn't agree with you. That's all we said. I learned very early on in life that if I could take control, that I could create a safe environment. That is still very important to me. It's still one of my biggest coping strategies is to take control because then I can create a place of safety, and that is in any situation. You know, it's kind of like I have all these notes and Brad has none. It's like if I can control this, it'll be fine, you know. And it's like that's crazy. I mean, it's not, but that is my coping strategy. My coping strategy is when those triggers are hit, I'm going to gain control. I'm going to gain control of the situation. I am going to be independent. I'm extremely independent. And I also cope by having negative beliefs. Like I can't trust you. I will. That's my coping strategy with Brad. Is I can't trust you. I'm not. I have to take control of this and fix the situation.
Yeah. So on page 8, you have this list of words. The first one are your feelings or your beliefs. Okay. So when things get chaotic or stressful to you, I talked about not measuring up, being inadequate, feeling like a failure, not being chosen. Okay? What do you feel? How do you react to that? Okay? And then from those feelings, what do you do? Okay? Most of us will have 3 or 4 of those words and 3 or 4 coping strategies. Right? If you get to 10, just stop.
And some of those words you might circle, the first list, you might circle and wonder why you circled that. The first time I did this, I circled abandoned, and I'm like, where in the world did that come from? Until I could go back and realize that is a fear of mine. I didn't know where it came from until I kind of explored that.
Obviously, those lists are not exhaustive. They fit on a page. So if there's a word that really jumps out to you, it's not on there, just write it in. It's okay. First of all, is this just making sense? Anyone going, I'm not sure what we're doing here. Okay.
Are we supposed to write the words on the cycle down
Yes, when you finished circling your words. So if you will write your words, your feeling words at the top, and your coping strategy clockwise to the right, if you'll go ahead and write those in. Then if your spouse is with you, they can fill in their part. If your spouse is not with you, don't do it for them. Okay.
But I take control.
There you go.
Yeah. 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 And for the sake of time, we're gonna proceed a little further. Just know that if Karen and I have not totally killed all our credibility in the hour and 45 minutes that we've spent with you, and you want to talk about some of this further, the Dravet conference has set up times for you to meet with us personally. The list is on this table right here, and you can sign up for it if you want. So as we move on, if you'll look, when you get your words and your spouse's words on the same sheet of paper, you see this cycle that starts to happen. And when we're operating in these, we call it the pain cycle, and we didn't invent it. Dr. Terry Hargrave and his wife Sharon, who are the directors of marriage and family therapy at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pepperdine, respectively, created this. And we love it because it's so practical. When I'm working with couples in my counseling practice and they come in and they say, we argue about everything. I say, I don't think so. She said, oh no, we do. We argue about everything. And what I tell them is, I don't believe you argue about everything. I believe you have the same argument over and over and over. You just have different on-ramps for it. We'll on-ramp it with finances today. We'll on-ramp it with kids tomorrow and work the next day and something else, in-laws the next day. But it all ends up the same. Because here's what happens. Karen says something to me that hits my trigger. I knew I couldn't count on you to stop and get the milk. What is she telling me?
You're a failure.
I'm a failure. I don't measure up. And as soon as that gets triggered in me, what do? Well, pick one, because I do them all just about equally well. But when I do that and don't own it, what does it do to her?
Makes you feel abandoned.
Yeah, one of those things she said was, my dad didn't listen to me. I told you to get the milk. I even sent it in text, partly so that she could prove she, just kidding. So what you're saying is, I'm not important enough to you to remember to do this little thing. And so she takes control. And when she takes control, what does that tell me? I'm not good enough. And we just spiral. Do you see that? Can you see it in your own relationships? Can you see it in relationships with other people? This can even happen in doctors and school relationships. They have no idea what your pain triggers are. But what happens to you when a teacher or a doctor says they're not doing very well? Flares something up in us, right? And we have to deal with that pain in some way to get rid of that pain, even if it means blaming them. Well, if you were a better teacher, they'd be doing better. And guess what? They have a coping trigger too. And here we go. And I don't care nearly as much about those relationships as I do this one. Because this relationship is where resilience and perseverance grows. This is the relationship that's going to help us see the marathon to the end. So this is the one that we need to protect. Right? So I would love for you, encourage you to think about what this cycle looks like in your marriage. Now we want to go to the other side. In a lot of counseling, what I hear people do is they will say, so you know what messes up your relationship? Stop doing that. And that's great advice. Just stop. Except that you have to understand that I have 50 years of experience practicing these coping strategies. And while our brains can consider anything, what they like the most is familiar. So what I have carved over the last 50 years is this incredible path of least resistance that says when chaos or drama or conflict occurs, do this. How do I stop that? What I love about this theory is it tells us how. And it's not rocket science and it's not psychobabble. The key to fixing this is to tell ourselves the truth. Okay? What's the truth about you? What's the truth about me? Well, the truth about me is I do measure up. Okay? I'm not the greatest thing in the world. I don't have a TV show. I'm not Dr. Phil. But I have helped some people in the last 30 years. Okay? I'm not the perfect husband. Anybody have one of those?
No.
Nobody's raising their hand, guys.
No. Sorry.
Well, other than guys. Some guys are raising their hands. But, yeah, pointing at their wife. But yeah. And I like that confidence. Yeah. So, what would happen if I lived in my truth? I am competent. I don't always measure up, but I'm good enough. Right? I don't always feel lovable, but the truth is I am loved. Right? And so if those things are true, if I'm loved and adequate and valuable and do measure up, do any of those gross coping strategies I have make any sense at all? If I told myself the truth that I am loved and I'm valuable and I am a good husband, does it make any sense to play dumb with her? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because I'm valuable. The reason I had all those strategies is because I was afraid that I wasn't, and I had to measure up in order to feel that way. Owning my truth allows me to just be honest. But when I'm honest, when I'm honest, and I just say, yeah, hon, I'm sorry, I forgot the milk. Is she happy about me forgetting the milk? No, I forgot the milk. She probably needed it, or she wouldn't have asked me to stop by and get it, right? So it's not like, oh, honey, I just love you. And it doesn't matter that you forgot the milk that I needed to finish supper. It's just going to be great. No, it doesn't. But when I just own it and say, I'm sorry, I forgot, can I run to the store real quick? Guess what she doesn't feel anymore? She doesn't feel sacrificed. She doesn't feel abandoned. Because I owned it and took responsibility, she feels respected and valued. And if she's respected and valued, does that independence and negative belief and taking control, do those coping strategies make sense anymore? No. So she can choose something different, and she can be gentle and forgiving, which then tells me that I am adequate and valuable, and see how the cycle spins positively. Now, we still need some milk. We still got to fix that. Right? And this doesn't eliminate disagreement. Remember, Karen and I don't see anything the same way. We're going to disagree regularly. But when we disagree, it's not about our pain anymore. It's about what we disagree about. So when we're having a hard conversation about our finances, it stays about the finances. When we're having a hard conversation about treatment options, it stays about treatment. And on and on and on. And reasonable people can disagree about those things, right? But it's when we feel unsafe or unloved that it gets personal. Does that make sense? Okay. So, would love for you to figure out, we call this the peace cycle. Would love for you to discover that. And then the next sheet that you have puts the pain and the peace on the same page.
Yeah, but they didn't do their...
No, they're going to do the peace on their own because we're running out of time. Yeah. Okay. So, and peace should be good. It should be fun, right? Now, here's what I know about people. Most of us have a really easy time finding our pain, unless one of the words you circled was arrogant, and then you may struggle with finding those negative things. But most of us have no trouble finding that. I am amazed at how many of us as adults have a hard time telling ourselves the truth about how valued and valuable we are. It's okay to tell yourself the truth. I know you are loved because I'm a believer and I know you're loved. Okay? I have a great feeling that you're loved by the person sitting next to you because your life has been too hard to this point to stay in it if you weren't. Okay? Because especially you live in a culture that says if it's hard, just try another option. And you're still here. That tells me you're loved. Okay? Tells me you're probably safe. Because you've had to have a ton of hard conversations and you're still here. Okay? That's important. Okay? So we'd love to have you figure out what that peace cycle looks like. And then how do we make the transition from the pain cycle that we have a lot of experience in to the peace cycle, which most of us have not tried all that often. And the key to that is what the authors of this stuff call the 4 steps. They used to call them the 4 simple steps, but because people hate doing them, they changed it to what most of us call it, and that is the 4 stupid steps. Okay? Because it doesn't feel normal. But what we know is our brains do what we tell our brains to do. So, when we do these things out loud, we make the conversion from the pain to the peace cycle. The first thing is when I feel that stress and chaos, the first thing I do is say what I feel. Okay? Just say what I'm feeling. And you need to say this out loud because here's what I know. Remember, in any situation that Karen and I are involved in, what do I know about her? She is not feeling what I feel. And I don't see what she's feeling, I see what she's doing. Okay? And she doesn't see what I'm feeling, she sees what I'm doing. So by me saying, right now I am feeling like I don't measure up. And typically what I would do, step number 2, what I typically do when I don't measure up is some form of dishonesty. Play dumb, lie, justify, blame others, any number of things, but it all falls under the category of dishonesty. If I say that out loud, my brain has this amazing ability to not do it when it's destructive. So I can't say, Karen, normally when I feel inadequate, I lie to you. I'm not going to turn around and lie to her. My brain won't let me do it. So the third step is tell the truth. The truth is, I know that I forgot the milk, but I still know that I'm valuable, competent, and I measure up. And because of that, instead of making excuses, I'm just going to own it and do what I can to fix it. That's step 4. Try something different. Now, trying something different doesn't guarantee success. It just guarantees different. But if you've done that pain cycle enough, you know that it never ends up well. Why keep doing it? Right? Try something different. Based in the truth of who you are, rather than how you feel. Does that make sense? Give me a little head nod. Something. Have we just gone too much?
So let me kind of speak into this for a second.
Sure.
So understanding, I mean, this is hours of work. I mean, we've given you this in 30 minutes. We spend hours on this, helping people understand this and see this. Brad and I have been doing this for, working with this for 6 years. We still have aha moments where we're like, okay, that strategy makes sense now. It's not going to just come from you just sitting right here and circling those words. You may not understand where some of those triggers came from. It may be a matter of exploring where those triggers came from. I understand where my triggers come from. And they are real. And some of our triggers, like over here, the truth is I am significant, valued, and respectful. But I guarantee you over here, my mother's still sacrificing us. So that is still occurring. Okay, so it doesn't mean that situation necessarily is solved. And it doesn't mean that that's still not the truth of being sacrificed by my mom. It's still, but I can still go to this truth of that's that. I am significant. And understand this is lots of practice. Let me give you just a small example. There's a lot of examples we can give you, but let me give you a short one because what you have to do is rewire the brain. It's like Brad said, it's going to go down the path of familiar, and you have to rewire that. The only way to rewire that is, like you said, these steps. You've got to say it out loud because it keeps it. You've got to rewire that. So Haley's health is not good. She's had surgeries. She has a cyst in her spine about 10 inches long. She had 2 doctors in her young life that failed to give her good care. Because of that, then this cyst formed. We've had surgery, Kiara, she's had Kiara. We had that surgery 12 years ago. A few years ago, but because of that, with that surgery, the cyst is not. It's still there. So it's weakening her spine. And so a couple of years ago, when we're seeing the neurosurgeon, he tells us, he said eventually her body will start rejecting. I mean, her spine will start not rejecting, will stop compensating for that. And so immediately my demeanor changed because at that point I needed to take control. Why did I need to take control? I needed to needed to get my daughter safe. This neurosurgeon had not done a thing to our daughter other than help her. But because of our past history with a couple of other neurologists that failed to do that, my first reaction is, you don't value her. She does, it's all of my coping strategy. I mean, it's all of my triggers, being not valued, being sacrificed. So all that's going on in my mind, and Brad can see I've changed, and he's looking at me like, what's going on? My attitude towards the doctor changed just a little bit. I was very cautious what I said, but I could just feel, I was like, we have to get out of here soon. When we got out of there, I told Brad, I said, okay, this is what just happened. I said, I realize what's happened. But the thing about it is in the past, if we had not worked on this, figuring out what our cycle is here, our P cycle is, if we had not known it and worked on that, I would not have known what was going on, and we would have had an argument as soon as we left the doctor's office. It wouldn't have been Brad's fault, but that's what would have happened. That cycle would have happened because I would have said, why didn't you say something to the doctor? And he would be, what am I supposed to say? I don't know, because this is going on in my mind, not his. But because we understand this and know this now, and we've worked on it years and years, we were able just to walk away. I was still frustrated, but the truth is that this doctor does value Hali. He's not the same doctor. But I was able to calm myself down because understanding this and knowing this. That right there, the steps that Brad's told you, what he's talking about earlier is preparing for the darkness when you're in the light. That's exactly what that is. We've practiced this and we've worked on it. So then when the doctor says she's not good, we can have our moments. It's not easy to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But I also understand if he's hit a trigger, then I know that I know that we've prepared for that. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yes. Yes.
So how did you deal with your reaction to that?
Well, so one of my pain triggers initially gets hit. Uh-oh. I'm not good enough. I can't fix this.
Fix it, yeah.
Right?
Fix it.
But I quickly get to my truth that this is really not my issue. I didn't cause this, right? So this, whatever we're talking about next, is not my fault. So I can just stay present with her. I can stay available. And I can be prepared too. Hey, if she crosses some line, which she didn't, I can interject because I'm okay. We have some signals for that. Like if we're sitting next to each other, I might, just put my hand on her arm or on her leg, and it just, I don't have her issue. I have another one. I'll talk, and I don't always recognize that people are glazing over. And so, but she has a signal for me, which is not, Brad, hey, shut up, you've lost them. It's she just looks at me and I know. Come to an appropriate conclusion quickly. Okay? The
trick to that is understanding. He now understands what my triggers are. And he understands them because we've had these conversations of where these triggers came from. And they're hard conversations to have. Mine were hard conversations to have with him. But once he realized that that's where those triggers came from and they're real, understanding your partner's triggers and the way they cope helps you to protect them in situations like that. I know how to protect him now because I know what just went on. I can see it, and I know what to do to protect him. He knows what to do to protect me in those situations.
And even in that, while I didn't have to say anything, I could even say something like, hey, he's going to help us figure this out. Right.
Which, if I were in my pain, would have made me mad, right? Because I want to take control.
Yeah.
I would have gotten mad at him. I wouldn't have done it in the doctor's office, but it would not have been pretty outside the doctor's office, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And we have to know that. And so what's important is, well, I'll just tell you this. It's probably never beneficial for you to look at your partner and say, it looks like somebody's in their pain cycle. Okay? Okay. If it works for you, let me know. It's never worked for me. All right? But on the other side of that, we've been together for 33 years and married for 32. I know her pretty well. I know that kind of teaming up with the doctor and saying, hey, he knows what he's doing, let him do it, is not going to go well for me. Maybe now, but certainly not later. It's not going to work well. And it's not about me, it's about us. That's not going to work well for us. But what I also know is that if I stay in my peace, and we look at this as kind of like a two-step dance, if she doesn't have a partner, she can't dance. And because she is a reasonable human being, that if I will stay in my peace, even if she bounces in her pain for a little while, she'll come out of it because nobody's feeding it. And just the same, if I'm in my pain, if she can stay in her peace because she's living in her truth, I may bounce around in my pain for a while, but eventually, because I don't have a partner, I'll get out of it. And her calm will help me to get out of it. Does that make sense? Okay, so last thing real quickly.
We would love to talk. I mean, if you want to talk
Yeah,
just
we
about
can
it,
talk
like
about
I
that
said,
as long
this
as
is
you
a-
want.
Yeah,
Stephanie.
I mean, yeah.
So let me do this real quickly. Oh, I did have those up there.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been nice.
You're going to do the us?
Yeah.
Oh, we're
So,
good.
We want
still
to
got
ask,
3
what
minutes.
does your us look like? Okay? What does your us look like? So the us is the third person in our relationship. And this is where the pronouns get goofy, okay? There's you and there's me and there's us. And I have a voice and you have a voice. Us doesn't. But us determines the quality of our relationship. Us, the quality of us determines whether or not our relationship is going to be a place of light that helps us to prepare for the darkness. It's going to help determine whether or not our relationship, is a place that fills us and doesn't drain us. It is incredibly important. Okay? What does your us look like? Okay? So, when discovering us, there are a couple of things that we cannot do. The first is we cannot be competitive. Okay? Because if we're competitive in our usness, for me to win, who has to lose? She does. And I don't know about you, but if she loses, she's not happy, and that steals most of the thrill of victory for me. Okay? And you can say, well, I'll just be the martyr and I'll choose to lose so that she can win and be happy. And I'm just telling you, nobody really likes to lose. There's one thing that all martyrs have in common. What is it? They die. Okay? And their cause usually dies with them. Okay? Being the martyr and choosing to lose for her to win ultimately ends for most of us in passive-aggressive behavior. It also ends in blaming. I let you win. It was your decision. It's not going well. Fix it. And that's not good for us. And so people say, well, what we have to learn to do is compromise. And I'm going to tell you, compromise might be great in union negotiations. But when it comes to intimate relationships, it's not the best. One of the things that I see over and over, and I know we're out of time, so I'm talking as fast as a Texan can talk, is that when I see people talking about union settlements is both sides will always say, well, we got some things that were really important to us, and we had to give some things up. Does that sound like joy to you? No. I don't want to have a settlement in my marriage. And I really believe that while obviously we have to do a lot of talking because we never see things the same way, that when she and I really serve the us in our relationship, that our us is better than I would ever be on my own. And our us is better than she would ever be on her own. But it takes work to get there. Will we do the work? Okay. A couple of things to end. First of all, you're not alone. Now, you've known us for 2 hours, And it may have been the longest 2 hours of your life, and if so, maybe you're okay. But Karen and I are not event people, we're journey people. So, and if we could ever do something to help you along this journey, that's what we signed up for. Okay? You're not alone. There are people who will help you and serve you. Don't do this alone. And the last thing, some of you, how many of you have been dying to know what the squares on the table are for? So if you're a sensor thinker, this has been killing you. If you're an extroverted feeler, you don't care. All right? But.
And if you're a detail person, you're thinking, that's really bad centerpiece.
Yeah. So,
Really bad.
but now you're going to get to know, and we're going to end it here. Take a square. Okay? Take a square. And Karen's going to tell you the story.
So before I tell you that, like we said, you can sign up to come see us. If you don't want to sign up, that's great. We're just going to be out here between 1:45 and 5:45. If you want to come talk to us about anything, we're good with anything. Kids, school, in-laws, outlaws, whatever. So, the square, in concentration camps, they wore the same thing every day. They would tear off about a 3-inch square off the bottom of their shirt, whatever they wore. And every day as they finished their broth, they always left a little bit of broth in their bowl. They would use that square to wash their face and wash their hands. And that was a sign of hope, and you still had some power. They say that when they noticed the ones that stopped using their square, within a few weeks they were dead. Because they lost their hope and they lost their power. They felt like they were powerless. So we give these squares to a lot of places we go. We just do little squares like this to make you realize, it just reminds you that you still have hope and you still have power. And as long as you don't stop holding on to your square, you're good. Yeah.
You always have hope.
Yeah, always hope.
So, end where we started, that little poem. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, in spite of all the struggles, in spite of all the hardships, did you get what you wanted from this life? Because again, Karen and I don't believe that because Hali dropped into our life with all the challenges that she brought, that her presence disqualified us from the best possible life. And the best possible life is to be loved and to love. Thanks for being with us this morning. Hope it was good.